Good morning here in North America. Good evening across the ocean in Europe and around the world. Thank you for joining me in another Music Cafe. Today, I couldn't be happier to have this amazing conversation with this outstanding musician. Just listen a little bit. That is Stewart Goodyear. What a great pleasure, Stewart. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today. It's a
My
pleasure to
pleasure.
have you. And
How are
you're
you
joining
doing?
us.
So what? Oh, you're in Toronto at the moment.
I am in Toronto, and you're joining us from St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah, just 1 hour earlier.
Yeah, what are you doing there?
Uh, Now just waking up. Woke up, I think, maybe an hour and a half ago, but I'm still. I guess I was in a very, very deep sleep, but I'm doing okay.
Excellent, Stuart. You had a great interview with Michael Zarathus Cook a few weeks ago on his remote podcast, um, where you discussed many things. So I don't want to ask the same questions because they're there. He's a fantastic interviewer, but the more I heard the interview, the more I wanted to talk to you. On your blog, and that's one of the things you discussed very strongly with him. Uh, one of your articles is the question about you. You were the first person of color to record both all the Beethoven sonatas and the concertos. And the question that came to my mind is not why you, but why. Why is it that you're the first on a couple of things that are recorded? I don't know. Daniel Barenboim has recorded both, 4 times each, and why is that? Why? And I'll frame it not only in the in the framework of race, but also on why classical music is always against other things, raise people who do not know the music, which is my case. I came to this industry, as most of our viewers know, only 5 years ago, and it is hard to get in. They don't make it easy. So why is it that you're the first?
I really don't know. I all I could tell you was the shock I had to discover that I was the first. Although I must say that I shouldn't have been shocked by all of the stories that I read about musicians of color in the classical music industry and the difficulty and the struggle, and just how difficult it was to be seen on an equal tier to a lot of the other established musicians within the classical world. I didn't have mentors growing up on during my journey as a classical musician, but there were two books that directed me and inspired me to just follow my passion, record the music that I love, and not wait for permission or entry and self finance the recordings myself. One book was George Walker's autobiography, and the other book was The Soloist by Steve Lopez. And both talked about a musician of color who first began full of hope, full of optimism, but a lot of rocky patches along the way, and what it did to both artists psychologically. And I thought, that's the last thing. That's the last place where I wanted to be headed. So I just thought, you know what? Instead of telling people what I was going to be recording, I'm going to do it anyways. And on the road to even recording the sonatas, there were some rocky passages and a lot of adversity thrown my way. just to record pieces that, I didn't think was a huge statement. I didn't think it was an act of defiance, but it certainly became so when people were trying to stop me from recording all of the complete sonatas. So I did it. I followed my dream. I presented my sonatas the way that I first heard it in recital, and the journey went from there. But it was an important journey, not only because it tested my mettle and tested exactly how strongly I wanted this. I wanted this life, and how strong my passion was, and how strong my heart was, following my heart. And that's when I finally found and discovered my Beethoven, my way of interpreting those pieces and making every sonata and every concerto a very personal experience for me. So it was a blessing in disguise.
Not only did you record the concertos and the sonatas, and there's the concertos cover right there, and you also did a sonatathon where you played all of them in performance. I don't know how many times you did that, but it's not a simple
Seven,
thing to do. Sorry,
7 times.
7 times. So it's quite an achievement. I mean, you know the newspaper in Philadelphia described you as the best pianist of your generation. I think that they came short because they should have said the best musician of the generation. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
that's a different issue. It must be incredibly complicated to do and an incredible achievement to do. Play all the sonatas in one go in one day.
It was only until I read articles stating how much of a feat it was that I discovered what a feat it was. To me, when I first heard them, I was listening to a day of Beethoven and spending an entire um, adventure of 11 or 12 hours with this one composer and seeing so many layers, all different emotions, all different character traits of this compelling personality from age 25 to age 52 or thereabouts. And every sonata was taking me to places that I didn't know he would take me, from vulnerability to love to pain to anguish. I felt like I couldn't articulate it in words as a 4 year old or 3 year old listening to this box set of 13 LPs when I first heard those sonatas. But looking back on that day, it's like I was hearing the entire human experience. And it touched me to such a level that it was an important day. That was the day that I decided that I wanted to be a classical pianist and musician and composer.
What I'll get to the composer in a second. Why Beethoven has that influence on people in general? Obviously, it shaped your career, and I've told the story many times. The first time I heard the Ninth live, um, it's when I decided to work in the industry.
Yeah. There's something that's just very personable in Beethoven. You hear in Beethoven a man who absolutely had such huge hopes for humanity. He wanted everyone to reach exalted heights and lofty positions, whether from from the inside or from the outside. He really believed in the beauty of humankind. And I think even in pieces where there's anger or whether there is sadness, it is never a sadness that said that humanity is doomed. It's a sadness and an anger that said, "Look at what humanity is becoming, and how come we're not there yet?" There was more frustration, and there was a passion to everything, and one never left an all Beethoven concert, and one never heard an LP that featured Beethoven, coming away from it um, not feeling that there would be light at the end of the tunnel. Something good will come out of hard times, out of tragedy. There will always it was always a baptism of fire and a refinement of each other's gold, so to speak.
I I recorded the seventh sonata with Yefim Bronfman a few weeks ago, and it became, you know, I went back and listened to your sonatas when you played them, and I've heard that one over and over again. The fourth movement. I'm gonna play a little portion if you allow me to. I don't know if the sound is the sound coming.
Yeah.
Okay, just a little taste, and people, by the way, should go to Spotify and subscribe to you and listen to all of them. I heard a while ago that not that long ago, the tempo is everything, and I've heard this piece many times, and I love it. It's like there's that pause after dun dun dun, and then there's that pause. Your tempo is like you're moving forward. Every other artist that I've heard, it's a little bit on the slower side, but you take me like you punch me right into it, and I love it. How do you deal with the tempo? When how do you know how to rush in or not rush in?
I feel like every composition has an arch in the storytelling, and with that piece, that starts with a scherzo, and then a 10-minute tragic statement, very operatic and of a totally different world from the first movement, and then the sunshine that comes out from the black clouds of the second movement and the third. And then it's almost as if it's a summing up of all of these different interwoven materials in the fourth movement. And I always feel like it was Beethoven tongue in cheek beating his own drum with the first three notes of the fourth movement. Can't touch this. Can't touch it.
It's fun. I've heard two stories. One that it's a comedy,
Yeah.
that he goes with the three note, but I've also heard that it's exactly a tragedy, that you have to wait, and it's a tragedy. Uh,
Well, it's both of those create a friction. I think that's what makes that fourth movement so magical, and just that very tense harmony, harmonies that come just right before it it goes back to the tonic at the very end. It's like, where does that come from? And in a way, it's a foreshadowing of what happened in the second movement for a little bit, and then after that, it's back to can't touch it.
it's an unbelievable piece. I mean, out of 32, it's hard to choose what you
Hard
like,
to choose.
what
It's
you
funny.
like the most.
I did a 1 day sonatathon in Brooklyn. I was not the only pianist that time. I was with a group of pianists, and we were all assigned to pick two sonatas. And I think I got the email quite late because, of course, I think the Appassionata was one of the first sonatas to be chosen, and the Hammerklavier was chosen. So I was left with that sonata, the D major, Opus 10, number 3, and Opus 22. And I was actually shocked that those pieces no one was choosing.
I
They were
love it.
so they're such masterpieces. I think I myself, well, thank you, thank you for giving me that gift. So I was so happy to do those two.
To do that. You know, I heard a comment, and I think I mentioned it another time, and I don't know if it's true or not, so don't comment on it. It's like I heard that somebody asked Leonard Bernstein once, why was Beethoven the perfect composer. And he said because he had the touch of God, he knew what note to put after the previous one every single time. And that sonata in particular, I love it because it has some. It sounds like it's incredibly simple, but it is not. It's like I see how much effort it takes to play it. It's very very complicated, but it feels so simple, so melodic, so the harmony, so it takes you every
It
single
writes
time.
itself. Yeah.
It's really a fantastic thing. How did you become a composer?
Um, I started writing when I was 8 years old. I attended a choir school in Toronto, and the first compositions I wrote were motets that the choir sang, and I was really hungry to find out more there was to composing. I wanted to study orchestration. I wanted to write for various instrumentation. And it took me on a journey where I was writing not only orchestral pieces, choral pieces, chamber works, song cycles, and hopefully opera one of these days. I love the world of composition and the various possibilities and the challenges writing for solo instruments in the midst of our present COVID pandemic, and how even in this tunnel that we're at, how ideas of hope could come in and manifest and have it jotted down on manuscript paper. I'm a
Only
dinosaur,
only
so otherwise I don't use civilians. I'm always writing down with a paper and pencil.
only classical, Stuart.
Um, we'll see. We'll see.
It's
I love all worlds of music. I come from a very eclectic musical background, so I was going through my dad's collection. My dad died a month before I was born of cancer. So, but I felt like I had a kindred spirit in him. I felt like this the spirit was living within me as I was looking through his record collection and checking out recordings of Cat Stevens, Herb Alpert, uh,
Herb Alpert. That's a name
the
I haven't heard in a
Beatles,
long
the
time.
box sets of Beethoven symphonies and Tchaikovsky symphonies. There's like a whole array, Ravi Shankar, so many different artists coming from various backgrounds, but all wanting to communicate their love. So I was inspired by that, and I thought, gosh, I want to be one of those artists. And
You're
mentioning Bernstein, also, who was always very curious about the music that was being created today, and I think he did this amazing documentary where he was talking about rock and roll in the '60s, and he was interviewing artists. And talking to different people of various demographics, and I thought that was a great documentary.
Bernstein, of course, did the classical music for children that has never been replicated. I find that in
No,
the
it hasn't.
age of you know extreme media, nobody has come up with anything better than that to explain to kids, to younger
True.
generations, what classical music is. You're an extremely flexible composer, but musician as well. You play all kinds of music. I'm going to try to play one little thing. I hope I can get it right this time and I can hear it because last time I couldn't hear it. I hope I surprise you with this one. Let's see. It doesn't get more
Baby
flexible than
Shark.
that. Baby Shark. There you go. Everybody
Yeah.
knows that. Uh, you play, classical jazz and music for kids, everything, and yet, um, on the interview you gave, it's been a very very hard road for you to get where you are, and that's where I want to go, and I hope this will not be the end of my career in classical music. Why is it so complicated, Stuart? That's what I really want to get into.
Well, there are various people who believe that the classical world belongs to one demographic, one culture, one race, and one tradition. And people who disrupt that status quo, there's more of a challenge for them. But I think it's more enriching to think outside that very limited box and and really respect the tradition of composers and interpreters embracing everyone and welcoming everyone into their world. And that is my motto. When I'm creating something, when I am performing a concert, I want every single audience member to feel welcome. And I want to speak to everyone, as I'm sure other artists do. And I think that is the ultimate mission to making music in general. We are people who have a very important responsibility to say that there is there in a world where there is no prejudice, there is no hatred, especially hatred that doesn't make any sense, in my opinion.
Yep.
This division that humans have in order to either, I guess, climb up the ladder in by sacrificing another person's dignity and rights. To me, I think is absolutely deplorable, and it's something that I never believed in. To me, maybe it's very childlike and very naive, but I'm hoping that everyone has a vision of utopia where everyone is loved and everyone belongs.
As a concert goer, um, it is very hard to start going to the symphonies, to any classical art, symphony, ballet, opera. Um, in general, we're not we're not embraced. We're not. I never felt welcome until there was some level of understanding or of knowledge about the art. I understood very, very quickly in my first or second visit to a symphony that I couldn't applaud between movements, which was completely counterintuitive to the whole experience. So on this moment in time, where we cannot go to the concert hall by and large, and all the orchestras are saying, we're reimagining the season. We're going to come up with some 2021 very special season for you, reimagine, and the reimagining is really not there. Is this they're just broadcasting the same things over and over again? Is this the
Oh, I
time
see.
you know where we should be coming out with it? Obviously the classical music, but the new in a new way, where we can actually have people embrace. I mean, all the statistics say that people want to listen to classical music, especially now.
Yeah.
Um, so, how do we reimagine it? Really reimagine it? How do we get there?
Just by thinking outside the box, by thinking outside what was the original way of doing things, and to create your own take, your own vision, and come up with programs with various themes, with themes that are rooted in what people are going through right now, what people are hoping for, and I think this pandemic was a real test of mettle, where people wanted to communicate with one another. They were having virtual Zoom coffees, dinners, and parties. Even though people couldn't be with each other physically, at least they wanted to be with each other spiritually. And just that connection of looking into someone's eyes and smiling and rekindling friendships, I think was a very important, it was a very important 5 or 6 months that we had. And it was very difficult. And we even shared that difficulty and our sense of doubt and our sense of unease, where we're headed, what's going on. But at least we were on that journey together. Um, there were cases where people were fighting for rights of every individual, and it was very, very disappointing that many people were trying to create animosity towards that movement and towards that protest. But that's another kind of humanity that one has to face instead of just turn a blind eye. It's a lot of looking in the mirror and finding out why we are the way we are, and why personal liberty is something that we see as scary.
Um, Anne Midget, who used to be the reviewer at the New York Times and later on at the Washington Post, had an interview a couple of weeks ago, and she said that she was very, very disappointed when Black Lives Matter uh, started again in April, May of this year, and that all the arts, she wasn't disappointed with the movement. She was disappointed with the reaction of the arts institutions, that they would come out and say, "We, the ex opera or the ex orchestra, we support the movement," and she very correctly said, "Don't come out with these statements. They mean nothing. Go out and hire the musicians, hire the black musicians, play the black music, the composers." And it comes back to my question before. It is the bigger arts institutions, especially in North America, that are the ones that have not been able to adapt quickly to the pandemic. The smaller orchestras, they came out immediately with the creative things. The bigger ones with the big budgets have not been able to do anything that is, of great significance. I'm sorry to say it, and I hope they still talk to me after, but that is a reality. I would love to see something really, really creative coming out, and I don't understand why this happens in, long-standing institutions that have bigger budgets.
It's the small guy, and the small. It's the individual that because they're not part of a huge corporation, because they have it's because of that they have that luxury to think of various ways of getting that voice heard. And I think that's why people take the chances. When you think about movies, I absolutely love movies. And, it's interesting with independent films, there are subjects, there are actors, and there are directors that they take more of a chance on because they are not part of that big machine. And it's the road that is less traveled by that many people who have been in the mainstream, they kind of shy away from, because they said, well, this is how it worked before. We are always going to stick to the tried and true, because that is the formula that we that worked for us before. And even though it's dwindling, there are still some people who remember how it worked before, and that's our audience. And this is precisely why audiences are a little older, because the way of doing things was the way that was done, a few decades ago. But as soon as that independent person creates a stand that works and a lot of people come on board, then the mainstream comes on board. That's the strength of the small guy.
You've
So the
taken
small, well, so us small guys will lead the way and show the mainstream that, oh, the true meaning of solidarity. It's up to us to create an example, just by action, and not only by saying, yes, we support that, but how do we support that? How are we going to program so that everyone feels included and feels welcome? And it's the composers who we choose to program as are embracing the music of the present, and being open to all cultures, because all cultures, there are cultures that have, variations on the same theme, which is we are here to support one another.
I hate to say, but you're not the little guy anymore. You become really, sorry, you become the
Well,
poster
thank you.
child of Kerner Hall. Like every time
Oh,
you're performing here in your hometown, you sell out. Everybody wants to see you. You're traveling all over the place. But
I
I
love
do get,
performing. I
yeah.
love performing in Toronto because when I did the Sonatathon, it was such a great honor to present the way I first heard those sonatas in my hometown. So, performing in Toronto always means a lot to me. And so, yeah, well, that's an honor to be called the poster child.
Well, it's true. I
Uh,
mean, it's just a matter of looking a little on the internet, and you're the image of, uh, you know, at some level of the conservatory here, of a successful, home raised talent that has done it very well, and I get the impression. I mean, we've met only once, and I'll get to that in a second. Before here, and it's my impression that listening to you speak and having to self-finance your CDs, which is an incredible endeavor, you've taken unbelievably uh, uh, hard risks doing this. Um, do you care about what people say?
well, I'll put it this way: I've learned to hear, I've learned to listen, and I am very fascinated by where they're coming from when they share their opinions with me. And everything is really about having your own conviction that if there are people who are against what you're doing, you don't take it personally. You hear them out and you say, well, I don't disagree with your opinion. This is the way I'm doing it, but I respect you coming forward. And thanks for listening.
I, I wanted to tell you that the only time we've met before this was, and I remember it clearly because it was February 14th of this year, uh, barely a month before everything shut down. It was the second to last concert that I heard before the shutdown started. And it was no coincidence. The National Art Center presented your cello concerto, which you composed with Rachel Mercer in mind. Tell me a little bit about the piece because it was great to hear it there, with Alexander conducting and Rachel doing the solo.
Rachel and I knew each other since we were 13. I feel like she is just a great childhood friend, and we were in a trio together, and we kept in touch by Facebook. And it was great to. Well, that one great thing about Facebook is that people that you haven't seen in a very very long time pop up. I was like, oh my goodness, how have you been? How's everything coming along? So we were chatting about just our journey and what she's doing. I was so happy that she became principal cellist of the NAC orchestra because she's just a fantastic human being, wonderful musician, and I think she is a great treasure for the NAC orchestra. She was interested in compositions of mine, and I sent her my piano quartet, which her ensemble made in Canada, performed a number of times. And I heard the performance and was really captivated by the interpretation and how she played. And I was inspired to write a cello concerto for her and asked her whether or not we could make that a possibility. Fast forward to the premiere, and it was yeah, it was just a fantastic day, a wonderful occasion, and it meant a lot for me. in a lot of ways because the NAC orchestra, that was my first that was the first orchestra I ever worked with. I won the Canadian music competition, and one of the prizes was to play with the orchestra. And since then, we had a great working relationship. I've performed with them, playing different composers, ranging from Beethoven to Mozart to Tchaikovsky to Saint-Saëns. And it was great seeing those members. So it's more of a poem for cello and orchestra, more than it is a cello concerto because everyone is featured. Of course, the cellist is the protagonist, but it's really about that relationship between the NEC Orchestra and I, the National Accent Orchestra.
Right. One of the things that I was thinking when I was listening to your to the cello concerto in particular is, and it troubles my mind when I'm listening, and I want to know, how does a pianist compose for cello?
With a lot of research. When I was studying orchestration, I wanted to know the ins and outs of every instrument I was writing for. I wanted the writing for every instrument to be very idiomatic and very much speaking to all of the instruments. I did not want to write like I was a pianist writing for an instrument. I wanted to see whether or not I could get into the soul of a cellist. And if I was a cellist, what would be my voice on that instrument? And just went from there.
And you do that for every other instrument,
Yeah.
the same technique. But
The,
you only
the same the same way of doing it.
do, do you play anything else or only the piano?
I used to play the violin. I wanted to be a violinist actually because one of the concertos I used to love hearing was the Tchaikovsky violin concerto, and I learned the violin especially to learn that piece. I didn't quite get there. I got up to the Mendelssohn violin concerto, but it's an instrument I love hearing, and one day I would love to write a violin concerto one of these days. We'll see what We'll see what happens with that, but. I love the sound of every instrument because they're just so different, and it just evokes um, many sides of me. That's why I love the sounds of the orchestra.
I'd
When
like to
those instruments
hear.
come together.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, when the instruments come together, that's why I love the sound of the orchestra, just because of all the different colors that you hear.
I'd love to hear more music written for like bassoon or horn. Usually,
Oh,
they're great instruments back there, and they sound like the horn. Really, I love the sound of the horn, and I follow a lot Sarah Willis from the Berlin Philharmonic because
oh yeah.
she makes so many things with the horn. It will be amazing to. I know there's very few concertos written for horn, a few, but not too many.
Not too many.
But one thing that I would like to hear, I would love to hear, and hopefully when things come back to semi-normal or whatever the normal is going to be, is you playing Rachmaninoff 2 and 3 concerto. I know more. I have quite a few friends that would love to hear that. On that tone, and I know you don't like to share what your future projects are or performances, but what do you have in your mind as a project, not as a upcoming performance that you can
Well,
share?
now you gave me a new inspiration for a horn and bassoon concerto, so maybe that will be a project in the future. Um, all I can tell you is that I want to continue creating and writing and exploring the music of the period. I am very inspired by artists now who, within this pandemic, are coming, with albums and tracks and music that are very authentic to them, coming from their heart, coming from their living room space, and yeah, just to keep that music community alive. We're all gonna do something.
Has this time given you time to compose? I know a lot of composers have gone like completely opposite. A lot of people have been composing a lot, and a lot of people have not touched their instruments for a while.
Oh, I'm still composing,
Yep.
still writing.
And playing. Obviously, you're in Minneapolis playing as well. You have concerts.
Yes, there's a virtual concert tonight with members of the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra. It's going to be a program of two, three pieces um, for a piano quartet. We're doing a Ferdinand Ries arrangement of the second movement of Beethoven's Eroica Symphony. We'll be doing my own piano quartet um, that Rachel Mercer and Ensemble Made of Canada performed a few times in Canada. This will actually be my first performance of my own quartet because I wrote it especially for other ensembles. So it'll be interesting um, being in the interpreter's hat that evening for my piano quartet. And then we end the program with the first piano quartet of Brahms.
Very, very broad,
Very
fantastic
broad, yes.
music,
It's going to be
fantastic
quite an
music.
evening.
By the way, I'm gonna plug Ensemble Made in Canada because I'm here in Toronto, and I know the four of them now. Rachel has left, and they have a new cello player with them. But it's a fantastic quartet. Angela and Sharon and Elisa as well, and Trey
Fantastic.
is now the cello player. It's really amazing, and we did a concert with them in January where they had 14 pieces for 14 provinces and territories. It
Mm-hmm.
was like really an incredible night. Not because I participated in the production, but the music was great. The hall in St. Catharines is a fantastic place to perform. I don't know if you've been there at the Partridge Hall. It's really an amazing place, and people should go and hear them and see the music that Ensemble Made in Canada makes, because it's they're really, really talented players. I think that we're very lucky in Canada to have the institutions that fund the arts and that make people like you possible, and you enrich certainly our life.
Thank
um,
you.
Stuart, it's a pleasure talking to you. I find your music inspiring. Your performances are more than inspiring. It's on my phone, on Spotify. I have you all the time. I play.
Thank you very much.
Once you start looking at your numbers and you see that sonata fourth movement going up all the time, it's just the one person. It's playing it all the time.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
It's really fantastic to have you on the Music Cafe.
It's my
Um,
pleasure. Thanks so much
and
for having me.
and thank you for agreeing of being with us. I'm before I leave you. My pick of the week is I do it every time I have a chance. Uh, Please go and see our friend Marcelo Leninger, who's conducting the Grand Rapids Michigan Orchestra. They're doing a fantastic program. They recorded this week Romeo and Juliet. Um, don't miss it. It's really beautiful. Talking about reimagining what an orchestra can do. Next week, another great pianist. Uh, we are going to have Fabio Martino, who is this very, very young pianist from Brazil who lives in Berlin. He's going to join us next week. Don't miss it. It's a double whammy. 2 weeks of piano. So it doesn't get a lot better than this. Stuart, don't leave me. We're going to stop the stream, and I'll be back with you. Thank you very much for
Okay.
joining and agreeing to answer my dumb questions and trying to
Not at
bring
all. Not
more
dumb at all.
more
Not at all. It was a
more
great
more
pleasure.
knowledge into my mind. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you to all. And we will see you next week. Join us with Fabio Martino. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, and have a great day.